Okay, this is the truth about Jesus, part 5. One of the oldest critics of the Christian religion was a pagan, known to history under the name of, what's that, Porphyry? Yet the early fathers did not hesitate to tamper, even with the writings of an avowed opponent of their religion. After issuing an edict to destroy, among others, the writings of this philosopher, a work called Philosophy of Oracles was produced, in which the author is made to write almost as a Christian, and the name of Porphyry was signed to it as its author. St. Augustine was one of the first to reject it as a forgery. A more astounding invention than this alleged work of a heathen bearing witness to Christ is difficult to produce. Excuse me. Do these forgeries, these apocryphal writings, that's apocryphal, these interpolations, freely admitted to have been the prevailing practice of the early Christians, help to prove the existence of Jesus? And when to this wholesale manufacture of doubtful evidence is added the terrible vandalism which nearly destroyed every great pagan classic, we can form an idea of the desperate means to which the early Christians resorted to prove that Jesus was not a myth. It all goes to show how difficult it is to make a man out of a myth. Stories of gods born of virgins are to be found in nearly every age and country. There have been many virgin mothers, and Mary with her child is but a recent version of a very old and universal myth. In China and India, in Babylon and Egypt, in Greece and Rome, divine beings selected from among the daughters of men, the purest and most beautiful, to serve them as a means of entrance into the world of mortals. Wishing to take upon themselves the human form, while retaining at the same time their divinity, this compromise of an earthly mother with a divine father was effected. In the form of a swan, Jupiter approached Leda, as in the guise of a dove or a paraclug. Jehovah overshadowed Mary. A nymph bathing in a river in China is touched by a lotus plant, and the divine Fohi is born. In Siam, or is that Siam, a wandering sunbeam caresses a girl in her teens, and the great and wonderful deliverer, Kodam, is born. In the life of Buddha, we read that he descended on his mother Maya, in likeness as the heavenly queen, and entered her womb, and was born from her right side to save the world. In Greece, the young god Apollo visits a fair maid of Athens, and a Plato is ushered into the world. In ancient Mexico, as well as in Babylonia, and in modern Korea, as in modern Palestine, as in the legends of all lands, virgins gave birth and became divine mothers. But the real home of virgin births is the land of the Nile. 1800 years before Christ, we find carved on one of the walls of the great temple of Luxor a picture of the Annunciation, conception, and birth of King Amenhotep III, an almost exact copy of the Annunciation, conception, and birth of the Christian God. Not only the idea of a virgin mother, but all the other miraculous events, such as the stable, cradle, the guiding star, the massacre of the children, the flight to Egypt, and the resurrection and bodily ascension towards the clouds, have not only been borrowed, but are even scarcely altered in the New Testament story of Jesus. Nearly every one of the dogmas and ceremonies in the Christian cult were borrowed from other and older religions. The resurrection myth, the ascension, the Eucharist, baptism, worship by kneeling or prostration, the folding of the hands on the breast, the ringing of bells, and the burning of incense in the vestments and vessels used in church, the candles, holy water, and even word mass were all adopted and adapted by the Christians from the religions of the ancients. The Trinity is as much pagan, as much Indian or Buddhist as it is Christian. The idea of a son of God is as old as the oldest cult. The Son is the Son of Heaven in all primitive faiths. The physical Son becomes, in the course of evolution, the Son of Righteousness, or the Son of God, and the heaven is personified as the Father on high. The halo around the head of Jesus, the horns of the older deities, the rays of light radiating from the heads of Hindu, and pagan gods are incontrovertible evidence that all gods were at one time the Son in heaven. Only the uninformed, of whom we regret to say there are a great many, and who are the main support of the old religions, still believe that the cross originated with Christianity. Like the dogmas of the Trinity, the virgin birth, and the resurrection, the sign of the cross, or the cross as an emblem or a symbol, was borrowed from the more ancient faiths of Asia. Perhaps one of the most important discoveries which primitive man felt obligated never to be ungrateful enough to forget was the production of fire by the friction of two sticks placed across each other in the form of a cross. As early as the Stone Age, when we find the cross carved on monuments which have been dug out of the earth and which can be seen in the museums of Europe, on the coins of later generations, as well as on the altars of prehistoric times, we find the sacred symbol of the cross. The dead in ancient cemeteries slept under the cross as they do in our day in Catholic churchyards. In ancient Egypt, as in modern China, India, Korea, the cross is venerated by the masses as a charm of great power.